Welcome to Legislative Watch. I'm your host, Elizabeth Allen Hodge, and with me today is Representative Lenore Barrett, who is in her 10th term of the Idaho Legislature. Well, Lenore, the first regular session is underway of the 61st legislative session, and you guys have already set some pretty unprecedented records in terms of the joint committee meetings that you've been holding.
And what?
Well, let's talk about that. The fact that you've had joint committee meetings on JFAC is about the only one that we're used to hearing where both the Senate and the House meet together on a regular basis. But this year you've had education, you've had state affairs working on what they're called state sovereignty or nullification, and it's been pretty unusual.
Well, I haven't given it much thought, but that does, I think we do a slow start, but the slow start this year was not that slow. It heated up pretty fast. We got right into the rules and regulations and got that out of the way. The committees started, I think, earlier than usual, not with a lot of legislation because the big ones were out there. And so by having the joint meetings that we had as early as we did kept us on track for getting hopefully home early.
Well, you know, one of the things that was mentioned after after the fall elections was that it wasn't going to be business as usual in terms of the Congress, that they were going to be more receptive to the people, that they were going to represent the people more and be more concerned about the people. I think the Idaho State Legislature has a history of responding to their constituents or to the people. I think they have always had an attitude of wanting to keep in communication, and I think more than ever you've demonstrated it this year by the hearings that you've had.
I would say so. And I do think that that's one of our strong points as a state legislature, that we do, well, first of all, we like our people.
Well, and you understand, too, that you represent them, you don't rule them.
And we represent them because basically they're the boss. Of course, they don't all think the same on any given subject or at any given time, so you have a little balancing act in there. But I think probably a lot of the elections in Idaho are pretty much determined on your particular political philosophy. I know the word ideology has just been trashed, but there is such a thing as ideology. If you don't have some standards, what are you going to base your decisions on?
Exactly. Well, one of the things that you and I were talking about before the program is the fact that very seldom do you ever see any bills repealed. And there's a lot of discussion about, you know, for every bill they pass, they should at least repeal one, or for every couple bills they pass. And that just doesn't happen. You said that you've seen one bill repealed in your tenure?
In my tenure. You want me to tell you about it again?
You bet.
Because it is kind of humorous. And then this is recollection now. It was a bill, and I'm fairly sure it was Frances Field that brought the bill. God will punish me if I'm wrong. But it had to do with her area, and it was an old archaic bill, as we both commented on, that when there was a trial or something of a court nature that was going on in the community, which would be small, and then the sheriff was mandated to go up and down the street and probably into the bars or whatever and say, we're having a trial today at the courthouse, 2 o'clock, whatever, be there. I don't know how he did it, but it's a town crier type thing. So we thought, well, maybe we shouldn't ask the sheriff to do that anymore, and we repealed it. But nobody was following it anyway, which is the truth of some of our laws. Nobody follows them anyway.
Absolutely. I know when I was in the legislature, I carried a bill to repeal, well, it was actually amending the Clean Air Act, where every bar was required to have a spittoon in it and a sign above it telling people how to use it. So obviously that was something that was archaic as well. But on a more serious note, there are bills that are introduced to try and repeal parts of the law that probably need to be repealed. Not so easy to do, and that takes us to the subject of urban renewal, which is certainly on the forefront of what's happening in the legislature along with state sovereignty. And right now there are several bills in committees. I've got them here, and they've come through your committee, so I wanted to start off by talking about urban renewal. And one of the bills that seems to be stalled a little bit is a bill to repeal urban renewal. Let's talk for a minute about what urban renewal is and how it works.
Oh, good grief. That's probably a lengthy subject. Well, urban renewal agencies are formed and under the direction of the city councils. They appoint a board, and the Urban Renewal Agency then has access to tax increment financing. They don't have to go to the taxpayers and say, hey, how would you like a little slug of urban renewal? You know, in fact, they don't have to go to anybody. And along the way, the original or existing statute just kind of says, here's the cookie jar, kid, help yourself. And how the state, and I don't remember exactly when it became a statute, and how the state has allowed that to remain that way that long. My problem with urban renewal, let's get a little personal here. First of all, when I started in the legislature, one of the first issues that a constituent brought to me was urban renewal from the little town of Salmon. And the commissioner and I, that was new to me. I didn't even know what it was. And so I became involved in it. But it just hadn't ripened yet, I guess. People don't even know what it is, and I'm doing a crazy job of explaining it.
Well, but no, you're doing fine, but I think you're right. People don't understand what it is, and what you just pointed out is the fact that the legislature doesn't seem to have any say in the matter. And it's my understanding that when they have an urban renewal district, originally it was to overcome areas where maybe there were high crime or blight, and they wanted to make some improvements. And my favorite example that I learned of up close and personal was in Portland, Oregon. I was in Christian education taking a group of kids over there, and they had what they called a transient bank for basically for men who had no homes. And the reason they had no homes is an urban renewal project had come in there, and we were told that they wanted to get rid of all the flop houses, all of the flea bag hotels and stuff, so that those people wouldn't have to live in these things. And it's true, they moved them out under the bridge of the Burnside Bridge, and many of the men were sleeping under the bridge, because even though they were sleeping in what they called flop houses, they were in out of the weather. And when urban renewal came in, it moved them totally out of that. So they opened this, what they called a transient bank, where they could go and cash their checks and at least be able to have a place where they could meet.
Well, I hadn't, up to this point, heard that. Basically, or historically, I guess, it was a federal program. And I'm trying to think of what the Freedom Foundation have in their little book. Anyway, there were, in large cities, slum areas, and those were pretty much denoted by rats, disease, abject poverty, and so forth. So the federal government took it upon themselves to restore these neighborhoods, which they did to some extent. And eventually, and I wish I could remember the actual date, eventually the federal government says, well, you know, we've done our job. So they quit funding it. And then the states, who take a page from Big Brother's book every time they can, said, "Oh, we're not going to have any money for our little local stuff."
We'll talk some more about that. We'll be right back.